Good morning, students. Once again, I welcome you all in the series of video lecture. Today, the topic of lecture is Jane Austen's art of characterization in the novel Emma. You may have read the novel, I think. So here, I am going to highlight the different aspects of her art of characterization with a special reference to Emma. G.K. Chesterton has pointed out no woman later has captured the complete common sense of Jane Austen. She could keep her head while all the after women went about looking for their brains. She could describe a man coolly, which neither George Eliot nor Bronte could do. The restraint in descriptive power, the art of Jane Austen reveals is a forte of Jane Austen's art of characterization. Jane Austen, while she is portraying her characters, is guided not by what Wordsworth calls the squares of emotion, but by common sense and dispassionate energy. She was born before those bonds which protected the woman from truth were burst by the Brontes or elaborately united by George Eliot. Jane Austen may have been protected from truth, but it was precious little of truth that was protected from her. In Pride and Prejudice, when Darcy, in finally confessing his faults, says, I have been selfish being all my life. In practice, though not in theory. He gets nearer to a complete confession of the intelligent male than was even hinted by the Byronic lapses of the Brontes heroes or the elaborate exculpations of George Eliot's. That is, her art of characterization combines realism, common sense, and psychological insight. Jane Austen is unlike many novelists in that her characters are seen largely, indeed almost exclusively, as individuals, leading emotional and moral lives and as social beings, but hardly at all as physical presences. Whereas Dickens devotes the whole paragraph to a graphic account of the appearance, Jane Austen is very sparing of description. Although the opening sentence of the novel tells us that Emma is handsome, we learn little more of her physical appearance except that her eyes are hazel. Miss Bates is a happy woman. She is a woman whom no one named without goodwill. It is her universal goodwill and contented temper which worked wonders. Miss Bates Importance is in exemplifying moral and ethical qualities. Though Miss Bates is not a visible presence, she is emphatically an audible one. Her presentation is so memorable because it is done largely through the dramatic medium of her own monologues. In Emma, the main source of information about the characters comes not from authorial comment or from the statement, whether true or false, of others, but from their own mouths. Jane Austen does not present character and dialogue with the kind of extravagant eccentricity and delight in the grotesque that we find in Smollett or Dickens. She discriminates very finely between different speakers. Each of the major character is endowed with his or her own distinctive mode of speech, a mode that is revelatory of character. One of the features of Jane Austen's art of characterization is its precision. Emma is described in the very first sentence as handsome, clever, and rich. Physically, she is the complete picture of grown up health. We admire her physical stamina as she runs her house efficiently, causes her father, and arranges her entertainment. But her mental vigor is dangerous. Once she has an idea, she pursues it relentlessly. She is always extremely confident of being right, though in fact she is almost always embarrassingly wrong. A spoilt, a strong-willed, with a disposition to think a little too well of herself, she conceives it her duty to set the whole world aright. As soon as Harriet is introduced to Hartfield, she is there day and night. She persuades Harriet Smith, an amiable but rather a stupid girl of ambiguous parentage, that her former friend is too far beneath her in social hierarchy to be acceptable. She induces her to set sights on the vicar, only to make the indignant discovery that Mr. Elton now aspires to herself. She is never loath to be first. She wants to be first at the ball, likes being first with her father, and cannot bear the thought of yielding first place with Mr. Knightley to anyone else. Mr. Knightley's misgivings about Emma's fancy are well founded. She is proud of being an Imaginist. He sees her fancy as penetration. She likes fantasizing. When she first weaves a story around Jane Fairfax, To relieve a boring conversation with Miss Bates, she welcomes it as an ingenious and animating suspicion. She neither feels anything for people nor recognizes that they have feelings. It is Mr. Knightley who helps her to feel for people, imploring her compassion for Miss Bates, making her heart grow kinder towards Jane. When it darted through her with the speed of an arrow that Mr. Knightley must marry no one but herself. It makes her resolve to understand thoroughly her own heart. Thus, Emma is a dynamic character. Her story is the story of self-education. Jane Fairfax is the model of accomplishment. Her playing and singing eclipses Emma's. The impression she makes on us is of icy reserve. Her cloak of politeness makes her almost invisible. The contrast with Emma is everywhere drawn to our notice and like so many women in the novel affects our view on her. Jane Fairfax is a negative image of Emma, cold, ghostly and sickly, whereas Emma is warm, lively and healthy. Her only positive action is in rebuffing Emma when at last she tries to make friends. Harriet Smith is different from both Emma and Jane. She is to a certain extent a cipher. Her natural tendency is to be malleable. She is almost always of the party, but she hardly speaks in public. Isabella and Emma are alike in their domestic capabilities and family affection, but they are different enough for us to question certain points in Emma's character. Isabella is supposed to be less intelligent, but she generally sees Jane's good qualities and recommends her as a friend to Emma. She likes to be sociable. She is much more tolerant than Emma, having the habit of love old acquaintance. Unlike them, Mrs. Weston is a very feminine character set against Emma's limited femininity. She has loved and looked after Emma. She is warm, agreeable, and sparkling. She is distinguished from Miss Bates. Miss Bates is a marvelous mixture of the admirable and the unbearable. We know that she is kind, cheerful, noble in the face of fearful odds, but we can sympathize with Emma's dread of her flow of words. She is quite the opposite of any romantic idea of a woman should be. She is neither young, handsome, rich, nor married, but she is of goodwill. This distinguishes her from other women. Mr. Knightley, in fact, is in the measuring rod of Jane Austen's own moral, social, and emotional standards. We realize it at once when he discusses Emma's weakness with Mrs. West. He likes and respects Robert Martin, and he looked red with surprise and displeasure when he hears from Emma that she has persuaded Harriet to refuse Martin's offer of marriage. He has some human feelings. However, he comes very close to jealously of Frank Churchill. He is the first to suspect Frank Churchill of some inclination to trifle with Jane Fairfax. Yet for all this perfection, he is human and likable. He can laugh at himself as well as at Emma. The combination of jealousy and indignation that he admits towards Frank Churchill shows him to be far from the remote paragon of all the virtues we find first. The feelings of the warmest friendship, indignation, abominable scoundrel. Mrs. Woodhouse is selfish. His selfishness, sorry, Mr. Woodhouse is selfish. His selfishness is the true motive for his consideration for other people. His attitude to Emma shows a similar apparent kindness, but in being indulgent with her, he is relinquishing a father's duty. His sociability is limited to those who will entertain or be entertained exclusively on his terms. His horrors of late hours and large dinner parties made him unfit for any acquaintance but such as would visit him on his terms. Like Woodhouse, Mr. John Knightley hates visiting dinner parties and most social events. Mr. John Knightley is like and unlike his brother. He has cooler manner than his brother. He is less communicative, but like him, he is a shrewd judge of character and action. Mr. Weston is at the opposite pole from Mr. John Knightley. He is an easy, cheerful tempered man. He takes things as he finds them. Mr. Knightley hates such sociability. Frank Churchill has been sufficiently distinguished from them. He is an attractive character breezing into provincial Highbury with news of a wider world. He is devious. Unlike him, Mr. Elton is amiable and gentle. Obviously, in portraying characters, Jane Austen displays her psychological insight. She exploits the romantic bric-a-brac characters built around them. Through irony and ridiculous features, what is fantastic and sentimental in her characters. Clearly enough, characterization in Emma is masterly. The characters are so comic, yet so convincing, so horrific, yet so human. They have been sufficiently distinguished from one another. Thank you.